Hello and welcome back to Clay Pigeon Kart Club on the 11th of July 2021 for round 5 of the Blue Challenge. The juniors have already been out and had their race. The rain is continuing to fall and now it's time for the senior blues to head out on track for their final. Going into this race, the championship is headed by David Watts on 5 points ahead of Anthony Cleal, with Rich Puddle third ahead of Mike Bell and Russell O'Neill, with Sarita Schoen, Ben Joseph, Sylvain Vessier, Sam Dybel and Rob Mortimer running at the top 10. They're followed by Kevin O'Neill, David Good, David Waldron, Paul Dybel, Paul Alexander, Ron Schoen, Tom Parker, Stuart Gray, Billy Thomas and Taylor Waldron completing the top 20. Still plenty of time left for things to chop and change in the championship, 3 rounds to go including the one today. In the Blue Masters Championship, it's Anthony Cleal leading the way with an 8-point gap to Russell O'Neill. Ben Joseph in third ahead of Rob Mortimer, with David Good, David Waldron and Kevin O'Neill all even on points in 5th, 6th and 7th. They're ahead of Paul Dybel, Paul Alexander and Robin Schoen, with Billy Thomas, Stuart Gray, Nigel Vickery, Robin Stones and Alex Fortune rounding out the top 15 of a very competitive Masters category. In the Blue Veterans, it's Anthony Cleal leading the way once again, this time from Rob Mortimer, with Kevin O'Neill third ahead of David Good and David Waldron. Paul Alexander, Paul Dybel, Ron Schoen, Stuart Gray and Nigel Vickery make up the top 10. You can see there that's a very close-knit group, with everybody from Rob Mortimer down to Paul Dybel separated by only 6 points. Plenty of time for that to change. In the Blue Legends Championship, it's a tight-knit affair, with David Good holding a slender 1-point advantage over Kevin O'Neill, with Ron Schoen in third, ahead of Stuart Gray, Robin Stones and Chris Underhill. And in the Blue Top Weights, it's Ben Joseph leading the way from Rob Mortimer, Paul Dybel and Ron Schoen, all separated by only 7 points. Heat 1 was won by Anthony Cleal, with Dave Watts second, ahead of David Waldron, Russell O'Neill, Mike Bell, Rob Mortimer, Robin Stones, Sarita Schoen, David Good and Paul Alexander. But this heat did not go without incident, as the first two across the line, Tom Parker and Ben Joseph, both fell foul of the technical regulations. Heat 2 was won by Anthony Cleal, going up 11 ahead of Russell O'Neill, himself going up 13 places. Dave Watts was third ahead of Sarita Schoen, Rob Mortimer, Paul Alexander, Mike Bell, David Good, Tom Parker and Kevin O'Neill. This heat was a very mixed affair. Half the grid were on wets, half the grid were on slicks. You can really tell that in the times. And in Heat 3, Ben Joseph romped to victory ahead of Anthony Cleal once again, this time with Sylvain Vessier third ahead of Mike Bell, Robin Stones, Sarita Schoen, Kieran Quirk, Russell O'Neill, David Waldron and David Watts. 3 heats, all in differing weather conditions, and that is going to set the grid for the final, with Anthony Cleal taking pole position in the number 1. Joining him on the front row is Russell O'Neill. Behind them is the O-plate of Dave Watts and number 4 Mike Bell. Sarita Schoen, who's just up and out of her kart, so a problem with the number 2. Hopefully she can get that fixed and get out on the grid. 6th place, number 66, Rob Mortimer, ahead of David Waldron, with Robin Stones, Paul Alexander and Kieran Quirk making up the top 10. David Good in behind, ahead of Chris Underhill, Sylvain Vessier, Ben Joseph down in 14th, the winner of the Wessex Championship race. And Tom Parker, with Kevin O'Neill, Mike Watts and Ron Schoen rounding out the grid, and a non-start for 64 Taylor Waldron. So 18 karts out on track, assuming Sarita Schoen can get going. And now we're on board with Paul Alexander, number 6, lining up in 9th place. You can see lots of standing water on the Sturmey Straight as David Waldron ahead of us, struggling to keep to the inside of the hand hairpin. Now the field backing up into 2x2 formation. It's Cleal and O'Neill leading the pace, but definitely not a lot of grip to be found, certainly through the hand hairpin and the horseshoe. Now up towards buttons. Alexander trying desperately to get some visibility. Now up into top bend. It's Cleal on the left, O'Neill on the right. We're going to be under starters orders. Heading down towards the green flag. And back on board with Ben Joseph, number 14. Away we go, and a very even start from everyone up in front of us. That's number 29, Sylvain Vessier, going around the outside of David Good, and he's going to go off onto the grass, but Cleal's going to be leading from O'Neill, Watts. Vessier rejoining in the middle of the pack, looks like he's going to be back on safely, as that's the O-plate Dave Watts holding off Mike Bell through the chicane. But on the way up the Sturmey Straight for the first time, it's Cleal leading from O'Neill, then Watts, Bell and Rob Mortimer in the number 66. As Watts is going to run wide, so too Bell. Mortimer's going to keep it tight. Is he going to have gained the positions? Not against Bell he hasn't, but he seems to have against Dave Watts as they are around the horseshoe for the first time. Cleo and Russell O'Neill starting to really pull out the gap in the opening couple of corners as everybody's battling in behind. Now back on board with Ben Joseph, and that's Robin Stoddart-Stones going to the inside of Kieran Quirk in top bend. Dave Watts on the outside there as well in the oak place, so 4 together as 1 down the straight to finish the first lap. It's Cleo leading from O'Neill, Bell, Mortimer, Watts, Quirk, Joseph, Stoddart-Stones, Waldron and Alexander. And that's Kieran Quirk now, he's up into, looks like 5th spot. Ben Joseph's followed him through as well on the inside of Billy's blind. Through the chicane and up the Sturmey Straight, number 27 ahead of us in the PCR. Going to defend the inside. Joseph's going to use the outside line and the extra grip. Quirk's going to lose the back end mid-corner. He's going to catch it, but Ben Joseph is going to take that position. Now we're back on board with Paul Alexander, number 82 alongside us. That's Chris Underhill. So Underhill's made the move in the first half of the lap. Paul Alexander now trying to keep on the back of him, but you can see how much the kart was moving around there. The driver's definitely struggling for grip. As around they go to finish the next lap. That's Watts and Stoddart-Stones side by side. So too Tom Parker and the recovering Sylvain Vessier. So many side by side opportunities down towards Billy's blind this lap. And that's Vessier, and he's going to make a move on David Good as well. So Vessier gets 2 in 1. Now we're back on board with Ben Joseph. Up to 4th spot. Number 4 ahead of us is Mike Bell. They're both going to run to the outside of the circuit, try and get the grip. A little bit of contact there, but no harm, no foul. Bell's going to hold on to 3rd place for the moment. Now back on board, number 66, Rob Mortimer. Look at the grip Joseph's got. Around the outside on the exit of the horseshoe, and up the inside in buttons. Oh, and that's Alexander. He's been tanked around by Sylvain Vessier, and he's not going to be happy about that. Now down to complete another lap. It's Cleo leading from O'Neill. Then it's Joseph, Bell, Mortimer, Quirk, and Stoddart-Stones. Then it looks like Watts, Underhill, Good, then Vessier. Sorry, Waldron, Vessier, Good, Parker. Then it's Mike Watts pulling away from Ron Schoen. There's Kevin O'Neill and Paul Alexander recovering, and that's Sarita Schoen joining the race a few laps late. Good to see that the number 2 has gotten up and running. Now back on board once again with Rob Mortimer, tight through the hand hairpin. And that's going to let Mike Bell hold on around the outside once again, up into the horseshoe. You can see Bell's kart really struggling for any grip through there, is now up through buttons and towards top end. Number 4 in 4th, hanging on against the number 66 as round they go again, and you can see Ben Joseph is checked out from that group. New fastest lap from Joseph as he's reeling in Russell O'Neill. That's Sylvain Vessier closing in on David Waldron. David Good starting to pull a bit of a gap to Tom Parker. Next through is Mike Watts. He's opening up a gap himself against Ron Schoen. Now on board with Mortimer once again, looking to the inside of the hand hairpin. Bell going to run wide once again. Mortimer goes for the tight line. Once again though, Bell holds on. So the outside line where all the grip is a longer route. It seems to be proving dividend. Now we're on board with Ben Joseph. Number 3 ahead of us is Russell O'Neill, currently in 2nd place. But Joseph's going to switch back underneath on the way out of pit bend as down the straight they go, and across the line Ben Joseph, new fastest lap of the race in the process, passes Russell O'Neill for 2nd place. Then there's Bell, Mortimer, Quirk and Stoddart-Stones, almost 4 as 1 through Billy's blind. Now we're on board with Mortimer once again. Definitely has got the run on Bell through the chicane. Looking to the left on the way down to the hand hairpin. Bell's going to go deep. Mortimer with a wider turn in than the previous lap, and it looks like it's going to pay off for him. Now down into the horseshoe, Mortimer still on the outside, but it looks like he's through and clear. So Rob Mortimer now up into 4th place. Mike Bell down to 5th in behind as he got towards top bend. There's Joseph, there's O'Neill, and then through behind that's Mortimer ahead of Bell, ahead of Quirk, ahead of Stoddart-Stones. This 4-kart group I don't think is over with yet. Then in behind that's Chris Underhill, ahead of Sylvain Vessier and Dave Watts, and David Waldron, David Good, and there's Tom Parker, so the 3 Davids in a line. And it looks like Mike Watts and Ron Schoen. Schoen certainly pulled a few tenths back on Watts the last time by. Then in behind that's Paul Alexander trying really hard to make up for the earlier incident. He's got Sarita Schoen right with him, and you can see Alexander going sideways all over the place trying to catch Ron Schoen. Sarita's going to go underneath in Billy's blind and unlap herself. Back to the lead, it's Anthony Cleal ahead of Ben Joseph as they go down through the kink in towards Billy's blind once again. You can see Ben Joseph, several fastest lap of the race in a row as he's trying to hunt down Anthony Cleal through the chicane, and you can almost see the gap coming down. Cleal getting bigger, now he's disappeared in the spray, and that on the inside, that's Robin Stoddart Stones in the number 13, I believe, stranded on the inside of the hand hairpin. Something must have happened there. Now we're on board with Rob Mortimer. Stoddart Stones is still stuck. And there's somebody off as well on the left there, look, and Kieran Quirk is also dropping down with Stoddart Stones, so it looks like both of them off at the hand hairpin. As Cleal now across to finish another lap. Ben Joseph once again closing in as they go into Billy's blind. Cleal struggling for a grip. You can see the back end of that kart starting to break out. And Joseph gains a lot through the chicane. Gets a run, looks to the left, looks back to the right. Nothing happening there as there's the marshal moving Stoddart Stones' kart out the way. As now out of the hand hairpin and on the short chute towards the horseshoe. Number 10 in front of us in the orange helmet is Kevin O'Neill. And Joseph's going to use the outside line once again. Got such grip and he looks like he's gotten past them both. Now up towards top bend, Ben Joseph, the number 40, takes the lead. Anthony Cleal's got past Kevin O'Neill as well, but Joseph takes the lead of the race ahead of Anthony Cleal. Russell O'Neill still in third spot. Now can Anthony Cleal attack Ben Joseph back? We'll have to see. There's Bell. Then the next kart through is Sylvain Vessier, starting to pull away from Chris Underhill. Underhill himself starting to pull away a little bit from David Watts. Then it's Waldron and Good battling over 9th and 10th. We've actually lost Tom Parker. Parker's in the pit, so something must be up with the number 63. There's Sarita Schoen unlapping herself on Mike Watts, who's now up into 11th, ahead of Ron Schoen. Paul Alexander working hard to try and close that gap back up. And then it's Joseph and Cleal, so they've lapped everybody up to 13th spot. You see how much people are struggling for grip out there. Now back to 4th spot. There's Rob Mortimer out of top bend, ahead of Mike Bell. Then it's Vessier. Vessier been closing in on Bell the last couple of laps. Chris Underhill is pulling away from Dave Watts, the two Tony karts. Then it's Waldron ahead of Good, and Stoddart Stones in behind them has gotten back going again. So Robin Stoddart Stones back in the mix. Just through Billy's blind they go once again. And now out of top bend, Ben Joseph's got ahead of Paul Alexander now. His next target is the number 11 of Ron Schoen down into Billy's once again. Anthony Cleal looking to try and get through on Paul Alexander, and that's Rob Mortimer. And there's no engine sound, so that is just a rolling kart. Possibly something like the chain snapping or the coil lead coming unplugged, but either way, that's Rob Mortimer in the pits and out of the race. Utter heartbreak for the number 66. Out of 4th spot. That's going to move everybody up a spot, including David Good, who's gotten ahead of David Waldron on that last lap. So Good up to 8th. Going to hold that down to Billy's blind. Robin Stoddart Stones in behind them. Then is Watts pulling away from Ron Schoen. And look, Ron Schoen now under attack from Paul Alexander. And Alexander's going to make the move. Down the start-finish. Paul Alexander up into 11th now. Ahead of Ron Schoen. So Alexander looking to try and complete the comeback drive. And there's Ben Joseph just switching back on number 32. Mike Watts up the Sturmey Straight. Now Joseph into the hand hairpin, going for a wide apex and an early cutback. Now up into the horseshoe he goes. There's another side by side. I think that's Stoddart Stones unlapping himself against David Waldron. The next kart through, number 2 Sarita Schoen, actually now on the same lap as Stoddart Stones, so she's chasing him down for position. Then it's Ben Joseph coming across to take the last lap board. Through the kink goes the number 40, down in towards Billy's blind. Anthony Cleal still giving chase as they're both ahead of Mike Watts now. Through the chicane and up onto the Sturmy straight goes Ben Joseph. Clear track ahead of him. He goes down into the hand hairpin. Again, that very late apex up towards the horseshoe. Hanging out in the middle of the road where all the grip is. Now in towards Buttons. And around Buttons, and now only top bend to go for Ben Joseph. Nice and calm round top bend. Out of top bend though to come across the line and win his second final of the year. Ben Joseph takes the win here at Clay Pigeon today in the rain once again. The Welshman seeming partly amphibious with how well he seems to go in the wet weather conditions. Anthony Cleal again second ahead of Russell O'Neill and a big gap back. Next kart through, number 4 Mike Bell. Going to be finishing in 4th position. Following him is Sylvain Vessier in the second of the 2 white karts. There's Vessier across the line to round out the top 5. And a good run from Chris Underhill from 12th on the grid. He's going to finish 6th across the line. Dave Watts, the O-Plates Championship lead, is going to take a bit of a dent. He's going to cross the line in 7th. And David Good going to hold off David Waldron. And I think that's going to round out our finishers. Yep, sure enough it does. Cerise shown across the line. So that is all for today, and the results will stand in scrutineering. Ben Joseph takes the win from 14th on the grid. A phenomenal drive from the Welshman, ahead of Anthony Cleal with Russell O'Neill 3rd. Mike Bell 4th ahead of Sylvain Vessier. Chris Underhill would take 6th ahead of the 3 Davids. Watts ahead of Good, ahead of Waldron. And Mike Watts with a good drive to round out the top 10 from 17th on the grid. He'd be ahead of Paul Alexander, recovering to 11th, with Ron Schoen 12th, ahead of Kevin O'Neill, Robin Starrett-Stones, Sarita Schoen, Rob Mortimer in early after a chain snapping, Tom Parker also in early, likewise Kieran Quirk. What that will do to the championship, Dave Watts is going to hold the lead, but his gap is going to close to only 7 points to Anthony Cleal. Mike Bell's going to move up into 3rd, ahead of Russell O'Neill, with Sarita Schoen now into 5th. Ben Joseph, Sylvain Vessier, Rob Mortimer, David Waldron and David Good going to round out the top 10 ahead of Sam Dybel, Paul Alexander, Kevin O'Neill, Ron Schoen and Rich Puddle completing the top 15. In the Blue Masters category, it's Anthony Cleal again going to increase his lead up to 11 points ahead of Russell O'Neill. Ben Joseph's holding 4th ahead of David Waldron, David Good, Rob Mortimer, Kevin O'Neill, Paul Alexander, Ron Schoen and Billy Thomas. So a lot of chopping and changing inside that top 10. In the Blue Masters category, Paul Dybel, Robin Starrett-Stones, Chris Underhill, Phil Shears and Nigel Vickery are going to complete the top 15 in that class. In the Blue Veterans, Anthony Cleal extends his lead once again. Rob Mortimer is going to hold 2nd, but only just as David Waldron moves on to even points with him. David Good only a point behind him 4th, ahead of Paul Alexander. Kevin O'Neill only a point behind Alexander in 5th and 6th, with Ron Schoen 7th. Ahead of Paul Dybel, Robin Starrett-Stones and Chris Underhill. With Phil Shears, Nigel Vickery, Adrian Help, Stuart Gray and Mike Watts moving up into 15th in that category. And in the blue top weights, it's Ben Joseph who's going to increase his lead by a further 2 points ahead of Rob Mortimer. Ron Schoen in 3rd ahead of Paul Dybel, Billy Thomas and Phil Shears. With Adrian Helps, Mike Watts, Mark Cook and Alan Lewis completing the top weight class. There's still plenty to play for, especially between those top 3. And that's going to be all for today at Clay Pigeon. Join us again in a couple of weeks as we head to Forestedge Kart Club for the next round of the Blue Challenge. See you then. Goodbye.